Well, President Trump will be back in the White House right there tomorrow afternoon. There are a lot of similarities, actually, with Ronald Reagan. Back in 1985, he was the last president to take the oath of office inside the Capitol Rotunda. Also in 1981, the Iran hostages were released. Now, we have hostages being released in the Middle East on another front. We're back with our panel, Harold Ford Jr., Kellyanne Conway, Alex Castellanos, and Karl Rove. There is symmetry here, Kellyanne.
Yes, and the symmetry for me is 8 years ago, getting there on day one. So much activity, day one, week one, month one, the first 100 days for President Trump. This time, I think, Brett, the issue of alignment for America matches up with that America First agenda. He keeps talking about the mandate, the sweeping electoral mandate to effectuate change. Expect him to work with a certain alacrity and urgency, but expect it to be very transparent. I think he's going to call the press into the Oval. He'll have his press secretary out there telling us he'll be tweeting, truth socialing, and nothing really shows results like producing and delivering. Also, I just want to say a quick word about the hostages. This happened during his first term. He presided over the release of detainees and hostages from many different countries. We had a special session of it at the convention that year. And you see even tonight, at least Doran's mother and family crediting President Trump with the release.
Karl?
I'm taken by the fact that we're going to see so much on the first day. Kellyanne and I went through this process of trying to figure out what a president should do in the first weeks. I hope he spends a lot of time after the first day explaining the many actions that he takes, because the American people are going to hear on, Tuesday and Wednesday, big glob of stuff, and a couple of things will pop out. But it's really going to be important for him and the White House and the administration to meticulously go and explain and demonstrate by his personal presence what he's doing.
It is a different communication style, Alex.
Very different. Remember the movie Everything, Everywhere, All at Once? That's how you communicate in today's world. It's no longer a linear world. It's social media. We're all connected. And sometimes Donald Trump, 200 executive orders, you think, oh, my God, this is chaos. He's flooding the zone with receivers, so you can't cover them all. And I think you're seeing our first nonlinear social media presence. This is what the future is going to look like.
He's standing at the Blair House across from the White House tonight. It's like the night before the big game.
What he should do. I'm struck that you put up Bezos and Zuckerberg and Elon Musk and other leaders that will be there. I think this president's sending a message to adversaries and allies like China and Russia, our adversaries and allies in the Middle East and North Korea, saying, I have the most important innovators and investors, richest people in my country with me. They may not have supported me in the past, but we have a big, big agenda, economic and national security agenda, and we're going to project big. So I'll be curious to see what he does about everything people said. But tomorrow, this is going to be a show tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to watching it.
It will be quite something.
Katie Pavlich, Fox News contributor and townhall.com editor. So much different world than the one that Trump left behind on January 20th, 2021. But one that will likely be far more different than it is right now in the weeks and months ahead.
Well, when we see the president laying the wreath at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, it's a reminder to the country of the most solemn duty that the commander-in-chief has, which is to understand the sacrifice of our troops who keep us safe, understanding what it means to have to put them in harm's way, and making very serious, sober decisions about where those troops are going to be placed around the world and whether it's something that the United States should be in. And when it comes to in terms of conflicts. When it comes to what we're seeing today in the news as well, we're seeing this hostage release coming out of Israel. American hostages are still at this moment being held by Hamas terrorists backed by Iran in the Gaza Strip. As a result of this deal, a number of Palestinian terrorists who have killed Americans are going to be released. And of course, there's the issue of the Biden administration funding the Iranians who've been able to engage in more terrorism all around the world. Then you go up to Russia and Ukraine. Of course, General Keith Kellogg has been appointed the special envoy to bring that war to an end, to come to terms with some kind of ceasefire and deal there. So the world looks different. The Red Sea has been inundated with attacks from the Houthi rebels who have been able to shut down shipping, which is a commercial, economic, global issue there. The president can deal with that as well in terms of Iran backing those rebels. So there's a lot going on over the world. The president has made clear he wants to reestablish deterrence, wants to reestablish strength, and looking at the way that world leaders have behaved, wanting to get to Mar-a-Lago to have meetings with him, and including enemies having phone calls over the course of the last couple of months since he got elected. There's a lot of people who want to work with him this time around in Europe and in other places because they saw what it was like under his leadership versus the weakness we've seen through the Biden administration.
Yeah, taking these beautiful live pictures there in Arlington as we do wait President Trump there, reminding everybody that it is a rainy day here in Washington, D.C. And to your point about what we heard from voters in November about what is happening in the Middle East, this is some of the Fox News polling showing that Americans are very concerned about the war in the Middle East. 65% of respondents said so, Katie. And now you have at least some of these hostages starting to be released. And there will be a lot debated over the timing of this happening. Obviously, President Trump really owned this. When we first heard of the ceasefire deal being reached, Biden said this was the deal he put on the table in May. One would ask, well, what changed? Right. There was a big election in November, obviously. Trump owned it with saying it was an epic ceasefire agreement that could have only happened as a result of our historic victory in November. Now we are left wondering what happens next.
That is the big question. Hamas has been playing games over the course of the last 3 days when the ceasefire agreement was agreed upon. The envoy to the hostage crisis for the United States has been in the Middle East for a couple of months now, trying to get this to happen, both on the Biden side and on the Trump side. But when it comes to what the president is going to do in his second term here, he has repeatedly said, I want no new wars. But that has not prevented the president from going after bad guys who want to start wars. So, there's a lot of people who think that means just total isolationism. He's happy to take out terrorists and others who are willing to hurt Americans overseas to go after our troops. And he made it clear at the Mar-a-Lago press conference 2 weeks ago that if these hostages, American hostages in particular, are not home by his inauguration, which is tomorrow at noon, there will be hell to pay. And that can come in a number of different forms. They're keeping those details close to the vest.
Everybody is ready there at Arlington National Cemetery for the laying of the wreath at the Tomb of the Unknowns. We're just awaiting Donald and Melania Trump's arrival. There's a little bit of breaking news here, and that is regarding TikTok. This morning, people who went on TikTok were greeted by an announcement that TikTok service was suspended. Well, now apparently they're back in business because Donald Trump has indicated that he is going to give TikTok a reprieve.
So the president, through this bipartisan legislation that was passed to force TikTok to take themselves away from sending data back to the Chinese Communist Party. It's not necessarily a ban. It was an effort to make them divest. They didn't want to divest because it's not about money. They've had offers from people like Kevin O'Leary, $20 billion cash on the table to buy the app. It's not about making money for them. It's about getting data. Exactly. However, the $20 billion cash is an interesting offer. The president has looked at this through the lens of there's a lot of young Americans who want this app to stay, lots of businesses who have lobbied to keep it. But the fact is that it is a national security concern. It's a national security threat. And the fact that ByteDance didn't want to divest from the CCP shows that that's exactly what the app is used for. And the president's trying in the next 90 days, which is allowed in this legislation, to try and come up with some kind of solution to take away that spying ability from the Chinese Communist Party.
I want to get your final thoughts as we do prepare for his next presidency. This was a Wall Street Journal headline on Friday. It says, can Trump do better the second time? It asks the question, but also says he's stronger now, but his brand of political disruption has limits. What did you think of that?
Well, when you compare the first term to the second term, which hasn't started, just in terms of personnel as policy, the Trump campaign and the Trump transition team for a long time has been looking at the things they didn't fill in terms of positions all over the federal government. So a lot of Obama holdovers were working under the first Trump administration, trying to sabotage his first term in terms of agenda. And also, they threw a lot at him. 2 impeachments, working against him, et cetera. So this time around, he's starting off on a higher, Russian investigation, higher approval rating, and he won in a landslide with the Electoral College and popular vote. So he's definitely starting on a better foot this time.
Let's bring in Jason Miller now, senior advisor for the Trump fans transition. Jason, welcome to you, and thank you for joining us. Please do give us a preview of what we are about to see.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me on. Doors are open. People are coming into the Cap One Arena. I think the arena fits about 18,000 people, but I think there's probably about 10 times as many outside. But what you're going to see here in just over an hour is a bit of a preview for what President Trump is going to bring to this country after he's inaugurated tomorrow. We haven't had a real president in so long. In less than 24 hours, that will change. Everyone's futures are going to get better economically. You're going to finally secure the border. And as you've seen, he's already brought a peace deal to the Middle East.
So there's a lot of questions, Jason, as to how much of the president's national security cabinet is going to get confirmed on day one. Biden got a couple of people confirmed on day one. It looks like Pete Hegseth is being delayed at least for a few days, raising the question of who's actually going to lead the Pentagon until that confirmation process is complete. Why aren't more of the president's national security team being confirmed tomorrow?
Well, that's a great question. We just had the committee hearings last week. Of course, you referenced Pete Hegseth, obviously incoming Attorney General Pam Bondi, a couple of others. But we need to get these people in place right away, John. Pete Hegseth sailed through, did a great job with his committee hearing. John Ratcliffe coming in as director of the CIA, obviously very important. So we need to get these folks in office, in position, ready to go. We're talking national security, so this is important. These people have had great committee hearings. They're impressive. Let's have the vote. Let's get them through. I'm not sure what the delay is.
All right, so I know that you've seen the enthusiasm out here on the streets of D.C. People are coming from all over. Sampling we just heard from on the street, L.A., Chicago, San Diego. Certainly there is a lot of enthusiasm out there. Now big questions about how quickly the president can follow through on some of these big promises, Jason. Tell us about that and what we might see in the first few days of his presidency.
Yeah, great question. In fact, I'd say it's probably going to be in the first few minutes or in the first few hours. Right after the president is sworn in tomorrow, I expect him to be signing some executive orders. Once he gets over here to the Capital One Arena, you're going to see some additional things being put into place. But when we talk about securing border, putting those border policies back in place, remain in Mexico, ending catch and release. Also, as we start going to some of the energy deregulations, so we can bring down the cost of energy in this country. But even, too, we're going to start destroying DEI and all this wokeism that's infected the government. That's going to start ending tomorrow. President Trump's going to go right to work. There'll be a couple of different tranches of things that are coming, but right away, we're going to secure that border, start sending home some of these criminal illegals.
All right, now let's talk about something that's very important to young voters across the country, and that is the fate and the future of TikTok. People who tried to get on the platform this morning saw this. Sorry, TikTok isn't available right now. TikTok is back up and running, though, because the president, or the incoming president, put this out on Truth Social today. He said, quote, "I'm asking companies not to let TikTok stay dark. I'll issue an executive order on Monday to extend the period of time before the law's prohibitions take effect so that we can make a deal to protect our national security. My initial thought is a joint venture between the current owners and or new owners, whereby the U.S. gets a 50% ownership in a joint venture set up between the U.S. and whichever purchase we so choose." How is this going to work, Jason?
Well, some of that I'm going to leave up to the White House counsel's office, as they're the ones who will actually be doing this. But the important thing for people to realize is this means that talks and negotiations are underway. Because if you remember a couple years back, TikTok already moved the housing of the domestic data to Oracle. So that resides here in the United States. Obviously, they're talking about changing the operational control of the company. That's ultimately going to be up to TikTok and with their parent company to do. So we remove that from foreign ownership and have that something that where it's in the U.S. and everyone can be safe and secure with it. But, John, President Trump has been very direct on this, even earlier today, saying that he's going to make sure that we save the platform. I think it's important, but we have to make sure that we keep security first and foremost. But there are a lot of young people out there. John, I have a 16-year-old in the house who came in this morning and said, "Dad, TikTok doesn't work." And she showed me the message, and it said, "But we're working with President Trump, and we're glad to hear what he had to say." And I tell you, there are millions and millions of young people around this country saying thank you for President Trump for finding a way to save it, and a lot of people are concerned about security and other measures such as that who know that he's going to get the deal done right. So I think you should be pretty optimistic if you're a TikTok user or supporter. And if anyone can help solve it, it's President Trump.
Well, we have 13-year-old twins who are not allowed to go on TikTok, so best day for us today.
Exactly. There are some saying that. That is true. Jason, just to your point, there are millions of people, though, all over the country who are watching this moment. There are thousands of people taking to the streets of D.C., coming in from all over the country to watch what is about to happen, the swearing in of Donald J. Trump. You speak to the president intimately often. What would his message, or what is his message to all those who are watching this moment today?
Well, I think there are a couple of things. Number one, America's back. Our standing on the global stage is back in place, but also people who've lost hope, people who don't feel that their personal economic situation is going to get any better, who see that their community or their streets overrun, who wonder, why can't I just walk down the streets being safe? But the other thing, too, that I'd say, on more of a solemn note, I think about the Gold Star families who lost loved ones in Afghanistan because of the disasters of the Biden administration. I think about the families of Lake and Riley and Rachel Morton and Jocelyn Nungary, people who have had to suffer, people who've lost loved ones because of the gross incompetence of the Biden administration. You're not
always stood behind our men and women in uniform, irrespective of that. And I believe that America is going to be a safer place. Look, what we saw on New Year's Day was ultimately tragic, and it was evil. At the end of the day, the only way to stop evil is to absolutely crush it. But here's what we know. The reason I'm in this town is to support Kristi Noem. She needs a confirmation right away. Pam Bondi as the Attorney General, Kash Patel. Those are the three most important people for public safety in this country. And I have a tremendous amount of confidence in them and Donald Trump to keep America safe.
As we see the Trump family assembling there, that means the president-elect is moments away. You've got the Super Bowl, huge event coming up on February the 9th. Are you confident that the security will be what it needs to be?
Look, we are working 24/7 every day. I'm getting updates every day. We're talking about how we're hardening the city even more, looking at some of the gaps that were in place during New Year's Eve and caused us to basically fail there. We are working. We put on the Sugar Bowl right after successfully. Here's why. That is exactly why Kristi Noem needs to be in place as quickly as we can. Pam Bondi does as well, so they can come down to New Orleans so we can brief them. So, look, when there's a big game on the line, we want to know who the quarterback's going to be, right? And so the quicker we can get them in place, the quicker we can continue to ensure that the Super Bowl event is one of the greatest ever in the city of New Orleans. And I'll tell you something else. It's interesting because after 9/11, the Super Bowl was hosted in New Orleans. And so it's interesting that, here we had a terror attack on New Year's Eve, and New Orleans is going to host the Super Bowl again. It's going to be safe. We want everyone to come to New Orleans and enjoy it.
Well, you speak of the president's incoming team, and you see bottom left of your screen, Pete Hegseth and his wife there as they do assemble on the steps, awaiting the president's arrival there at Arlington National Cemetery. Obviously, quite a moment, just hours from Inauguration Day and the swearing in of President Trump.
It's going to be quite a day. There's no question about that. Just back to the point about security in the Super Bowl and the urgency you believe to get Kristi Noem confirmed and to get Pam Bondi confirmed. You were behind Kristi Noem in the hearing the other day. How do you think she did?
Oh, she did wonderful. I left the committee room actually shocked. The questions that came from the Democrat side were shocking as well. I think they're starting to understand that the number one issue on America's minds is immigration, right? And so you saw some pretty, I would say, decent questions out of that. I think she's going to do fine. I think she's going to get a large number of Democrats.
Is going to come in with flurry of executive orders, said House Speaker Mike Johnson Rala, and we are going to be working alongside the administration and in tandem. Donald Trump returned to Washington Saturday evening to celebrate with family, sports, and political allies ahead of his second inauguration, a triumphant return on the Republican 4 years after they departed the city under the shadow of attack by his supporters on the Capitol. Trump marked his return to power with a celebration at his Trump National Golf Club in Sterling, Virginia, about 30 miles outside Washington. He addressed the crowd, giving shout-outs to Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin, Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, are declaring his mind eased